This video will give a brief overview of the topic of academic honesty and integrity, focusing on the honor code established by the students at George Mason University. We'll also see how the honor code and classroom ethics are enforced by the faculty and honor committee here at George Mason University, Korea. So let's get started by taking a look at the George Mason University Honor Code. This was written by students, and it reads in part, to promote a stronger sense of mutual responsibility, trust, and fairness among all members of the Mason community, and with the desire for greater academic and personal achievement, we, the student members of the university community, have set forth this honor code. Student members of the George Mason University community pledge not to cheat, plagiarize, steal, or lie in matters related to academic work. So there's a few words here that sort of stand out to me as to how this is important and can be applied in the classroom. Obviously, in the first paragraph there, you see three phrases or words underlined: mutual responsibility, trust, and fairness. So mutual responsibility, obviously mutual meaning that it involves both parties, right? This is faculty and students, right? And even students and students, right? We're all in this together. We have a mutual responsibility to make sure that this honor code is upheld. Faculty need to make sure that students are upholding it. Students need to make sure that their fellow students are upholding this honor code. Trust, right? This works both ways, right? Faculty have to trust that students are doing their best to uphold the honor code, that they're doing their best not to cheat, steal, lie, plagiarize, and that they're doing their best to help their fellow students with the same thing. Likewise, students need to trust that faculty are on their side and that they're there to help them sort of navigate through some of the difficulties that come as university students. Fairness. This is a process that I think both sides, students and faculty, everybody, the whole community has to rely on this process being fair. And later we're going to talk about how our honor committee here at George Mason University, Korea, strives to be fair in everything that they do and all the rulings that they make. You can also see words down below that sort of stand out. And I've underlined the word plagiarize here in particular. This is a word that I think a lot of students coming into university maybe have never heard before. And so we're going to take a look at what does this mean? What do all these words mean? To cheat, to plagiarize, steal, or lie in matters of academic work. That's what we're going to focus on coming up here. So Mason's commitment, the university's commitment, is to create an environment that's innovative, diverse, entrepreneurial, and accessible, and it helps students avoid accidental or intentional violations of the honor code. Hopefully students can see that the George Mason administration and faculty always try to do their best to reach out to students and help them, as I said before, navigate what can sometimes be a confusing educational environment. And we're all here to help. So what is integrity, right? We said that we're going to talk about integrity, and I've always loved this quote from the famous writer C.S. Lewis. He once said, "Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching." And the idea here is that, of course, it's possible to cheat and get away with it. It's possible to cheat on a test and get away with it. You might, if you're a student who decides to cheat, you might develop a perfect plan and there's no way that you're going to get caught. But that doesn't make it right? Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one catches you, right? Even when you know that you're not going to get caught, that you still do the right thing. And so we hope that all students and faculty alike approach their academic work with integrity. So according to Webster's dictionary, integrity is defined as adherence to ethical principles. And so we sort of think of academic integrity referring specifically to adhering to those ethical principles, especially related to your coursework, to your classwork at George Mason University. So the hope from the entire university community is that students can come in and understand that even when no one's watching you, even when no one is hovering over you, making sure that you do the right thing, that you still do the right thing, that you don't plagiarize, that you don't cheat. So occasionally things happen, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And so students need to be aware of the different ways that they can get into trouble by breaking the honor code. Right? So here's a few ways. the unauthorized use of materials and unauthorized use of assistance. This is using materials for classwork or using help from outside sources that your professor has said or where it should be common knowledge that you're not supposed to use it. Duplicate use of students' prior work. This happens sometimes when you have an older student who's taken the class before and maybe the professor doesn't change their quizzes or change their exams very frequently, and students have copies of the exams where they duplicate that work, or you take a paper that an older student has written and try to submit it or parts of it in your own name. Inadequate citations or false citations. Hopefully in your first year, you'll be learning a lot through English 100 or 101 classes about how we cite sources when we're writing. Your professors can cover that in a lot more depth in class, but you need to be careful about whether you're citing correctly or if you're on purpose or otherwise using false citations. Also, failure to quote sources and material. This happens sometimes where students don't use quotation marks, or they either knowingly or unknowingly use sources and use information from sources and then don't give credit to the original writer for that. There's other ways as well. Submission of another individual's work. You see this sometimes where, again, an older student has taken the class and they've written a paper and they tell a younger student, hey, I can give you my old paper. All you have to do is change your name. There's a lot of ways that you can get caught doing this. There's a lot of ways that your professors are sort of looking out for this. It's a bad idea. Not only does it go against the integrity that we talked about earlier, but it's very likely that you're going to get caught doing this. Removing an exam from a classroom is something that should never be done, right? Unless your professor explicitly tells you it's okay to take this exam into another room or into a computer lab, for example. You should always leave quizzes, leave exams in the room where you're taking them. In the age of social media and smartphones, posting or enabling posting of homework, exams, or solutions on websites or other sources of social media, or taking photos of exams or academic work is unacceptable, right? So if you're taking a quiz and you know that you have friends that have the same class but a different section that happens later in the day, and you're caught taking pictures of a quiz or of an exam, that's big trouble in the university setting. You need to make sure that you're never taking pictures of academic work, again, unless your professor says that it's okay, unless it's part of the assignment. That is unacceptable at George Mason University. Also, clearly taking someone else's work without their knowledge. It's bad enough if the person is consenting that you take their paper or take a look at an exam that they used. It's marginally worse if they don't know that you're using their paper or don't know that you're using things that they have previously done for class. This is not a complete list of the ways that you can get in trouble or that you can break the honor code here, but just some examples that we can throw out. Obviously, professors and other classes will have more detailed explanations of what plagiarism is and how you can get in trouble like this, but a lot of this is common sense. A lot of this really comes down to feel. You know if you're doing something wrong most of the time. You know if you're breaking the rules most of the time. So listen, it happens, right? Students do break the honor code. And at our university, we have ways that we deal with this. These are just some possibilities, and we'll get into more specifics later when we talk about the honor committee. So first of all, professors have a lot of discretion as to what they do if you get caught cheating, if you get caught breaking the honor code. That can include a grade reduction for that one assignment. They might ask you to rewrite the assignment and then say that you can only get the highest grade you can get is a B on this assignment. In maybe more serious cases, professors might recommend that you get a 0 on the assignment or a grade reduction for the entire course. They might say, all right, we'll reduce your final grade by 10%. If this is the kind of thing that continues and you're caught in multiple times in the same class, you could possibly fail that class. And typically, if this is shown to be a pattern, if it looks like you are doing this not just in one class, but throughout multiple courses or multiple semesters, it's possible that your major program could dismiss you. That the business school, for example, might say, you can find another major, but we don't want you in the business school anymore. It's possible that you can be suspended academically, maybe for one semester, maybe for 1 year. And finally, it's possible that if this is a trend that is seen by the university to be continuing 2, maybe 3 times, it's possible that the university could even say, I think it's just not a good fit with you and George Mason University. You'll need to find a different place to continue your university education. Now, again, George Mason University has established an honor committee made up of students and faculty that reviews violations. So if you break the honor code in relation to an assignment where points are given for the course, your professor is supposed to present that situation to the honor committee. So they might tell you, my recommendation is going to be that your grade is reduced for the whole course, or that you get a 0 for this assignment. But they will almost always submit that case to the honor committee. Again, an important thing to notice here, we talked early on in this presentation about fairness. The honor committee is made up of students and faculty. So anytime that there's a breach of the honor code, and anytime that a professor refers a situation to the honor committee, it is looked at by both students and by professors. So let's take a look at this. This is a diagram of the process that we have here at George Mason University, Korea, for when students break the honor code. So the first thing that happens is your professor will refer the situation to the honor committee, and they do that by using the George Mason University Korea website. There's a place where they can upload documents and give a description of their side of what they think happened when the honor code was broken. Once that happens, it's reviewed by the head of the honor committee, and then that person will contact the student. And that's this thing that we see at the top here where it says pre-hearing. Okay, the pre-hearing is just a meeting between the student and the head of the honor committee, where the head of the honor committee will present the situation to the student, and then the student has a choice at that point. Okay, and so you can see there's 3 choices here. I'm going to activate my mouse here to sort of show them. All right. What often happens is if the student has been caught cheating and the professor has proof that the student is caught cheating, then the student usually will accept what they'll accept what the professor has said, and they'll accept the sanctions that the professor gives, the punishment that the professor gives. If the student accepts the punishment that the professor has recommended, then the process is finished. Okay, it does stay on a student's record so that if this happens in the future, the university can see that a student is repeatedly violating the honor code. But for that time, it's finished. The student accepts the punishment and the semester continues. The student can also ask for either a full case review or a sanctions-only review. So these are 2 different situations here. A sanctions-only review means this. The student is admitting, yes, I broke the honor code, I cheated, or I plagiarized, but I feel that the punishment or the sanction is too harsh, and they want the punishment reviewed. Okay, so in that case, they can request a sanctions-only review. The other side over here is a full case review. This is where the student says, I did not cheat. This is a mistake. I don't know why I'm being accused of this. And they want the entire case reviewed. This is where the student is saying, again, I did not do this. I didn't break the honor code. I didn't cheat, plagiarize, or steal, and I want the honor committee to review the full case. This is all within the student's rights. Okay, now, from there, from both of these reviews, you can see that it goes down to another level here, and they're actually very similar. Let's take a look at a full case review. All right. So remember, in this case, a student is saying, I did not cheat. In that case, the head of the honor committee will say, okay, we're going to set up a review. And then they'll call on members of the honor committee. So usually they'll try to get at least 2 students and 2 professors, or maybe 1 student and 2 professors, or in some cases maybe even 2 students and 1 professor. And that portion of the committee will review the case in full. The student can choose either an in-person review or an expedited review. All right, an in-person review feels sort of like a court proceeding, right? Where the committee is there sort of acting as the judge, and the professor can come and the student can come. The professor can present their case, the student can present their case, and then the honor committee decides basically if they agree with the professor or if they agree with the student. The student can also choose an expedited review. This is basically not in person. This is where the honor committee will meet. They'll take a look at what the professor is saying. They'll take a look at what the student is saying. And they'll decide who they agree with, right? The professor or the student. Same thing in a sanctions-only review, all right? Again, sanctions-only review is the student admits that they cheated or they admit that they did wrong, but they believe that the punishment recommended by the professor is too harsh. Again, that student can also choose either an in-person or an expedited review. And again, if it's an in-person review, the student and the professor are in person. They both get to state their case for the committee. If it's an expedited review, the committee just reviews the materials and makes their decision. In both cases, right, the respondent, that's the student, has the chance to appeal if it doesn't go their way. So in either an in-person or expedited review, if the committee decides that the professor seems to be right in this case, that it looks like the student did cheat, the student can appeal. All right, the student has the right to an appeal, which basically means that the whole process begins over again, either from a full case review or a sanctions-only review, right? Basically, the student can say, nope, I still didn't do this, or nope, I still don't think that these sanctions are fair. Basically they're saying, I want a new trial. I want a new group of a committee from the honor committee. In that case, different members of the honor committee will be selected. So different faculty members of the honor committee and different student members of the honor committee will be convened. And at that point, again, the student has the choice to choose either an in-person or an expedited review. All right, and that goes for the sanctions-only review as well. The second time, all right, if a student, if the second honor committee finds that the student did cheat or that the sanctions are appropriate, then that is the end. Then the student must accept that twice now, 2 different sections of the honor committee have sided with the professor, and the student at that point needs to accept the punishment. Okay. This is all laid out in multiple ways throughout our honor code, which your professors can make available to you, by the way. Usually professors will put the entire honor code on their Blackboard sites. So sometimes students will ask, like, what are some of the recommendations? These are just some possible recommendations. These are sanction recommendations from the honor committee. And you might see that these are actually quite, they can seem to be a little stiff, a little harsh. So this first one that we're looking at here is for undergraduate freshmen. And you can see for plagiarism, failure to cite or attribute sources, the first time that a student does this, the recommendation of the honor committee is either a 2.5% final grade reduction, referral to the academic resource center, and going through a committee on academic integrity education model. And you can see sort of as the cheating or as the plagiarism gets worse, the punishments get worse, up to and including like if you're stealing an exam, or if you are like false identification, if you're sitting in for an exam for a student, you can fail a course. You might even possibly be suspended for a semester. If it happens a second time during the same semester, again, this is just for undergraduate freshmen, you can read that these possible sanctions get even stricter. It's even more strict if the student is a non-freshman, an undergraduate non-freshman. We won't go through every single one of these, but again, you can see that just something like failure to cite or attribute sources, the first offense, if you're a sophomore, junior, or senior, could result in a 5% final grade reduction. Plagiarism, or like representing someone else's work as your own, copying and pasting from the internet, can result in a 20% final grade reduction. If it happens a second time in the same course that semester, you can receive an F in that course, right? And then all the way down to being expelled, possibly, if this is a trend that continues throughout your university life. At the bottom line, at the end of the day, make good choices. You and you alone are responsible for the work that you submit to your professors. There are times when mistakes can be made by students, but I didn't mean to isn't an acceptable excuse. If you turn in an assignment and there are mistakes on that assignment or there's plagiarism in that assignment, it's not the professor's fault that you submitted something that has plagiarized work in it. It's not the internet's fault. It's not nobody's fault. It's your responsibility. Right? Culture can't be used as an excuse. So sometimes students will point to the idea that, well, in my culture, borrowing phrases or borrowing ideas from scholars is viewed as a form of respect, that you're showing that you respect those scholars. But at the end of the day, international academic culture is universal. These are rules that are accepted by and large throughout the international academic community, and you need to make sure that you're following those rules. If you're ever unsure, probably the most important thing, ask your professor before submitting your work. I always tell my students that if you ever have a question about if something you've done is right or wrong, you'll never get in trouble by asking me before you submit the assignment. After you submit the assignment, it's too late. Now your assignment has been submitted and you're responsible for that work. But if it's before the assignment is submitted, I'll never get a student into trouble if they're asking a question. There's a lot of times when we view these as teachable moments. And so you should trust that your professors, they're on your side. They want you to do well, right? And again, at the end of the day, we are all in this together. We are Mason. So again, be smart, follow the honor code, and if you ever have questions, please talk to your professor. Thanks for watching.